So as I introduced in the previous lesson, what I would like to do is go to this particular site, the iTunes preview site, and start off with any app. You can navigate around here, find any app you want. I'm going to start with Candy Crush, and I want to be able to pull some data about this app off this page. So I want to get the title, I want to get the author, I want to get the price, and I also want to get maybe the customers also bought. So that's really what I want to do, but how are we going to do that? Well, you have to kind of think back about how all of this web stuff works. Now, this is all, if you open up your web browser and start navigating to URLs, ultimately, this is all just sugar. This is all just CSS and all this other stuff that your browser is interpreting and displaying based on what the developers, in this case of the iTunes preview site, want you to see and how you want to see it. But this is not what the data looks like as it comes back from the servers once you request this URL. So if you think very rudimentary, if you start talking about HTTP and HTML, what you're doing is once you type in this address into your address bar and hit enter or send or whatever, this is just issuing an HTTP GET request to the itunes.apple.com domain and this other stuff and this other data in here as well. And then the server interprets that and sends back text. All it does is send back text. And that text looks like if you were to right click on any sort of page and say view page source, this is what that text looks like. Now, if you were to just write this out onto, say, Notepad or TextPad or whatever you like, Sublime Text, it's just going to look like a bunch of gobbledygook. And if you didn't write this, odds are you may not understand it all, but that's okay. You don't really have to. But our job when we are trying to get some data off here by scraping and crawling, we want to get access to this raw data, this raw HTML. Even though it looks like a mess, this is what we want to get to, because there's not a whole lot we can do about this. Sure, we can do some OCR and we can do all sort of that stuff, but that's very, very complicated. Much easier would be just give me all this HTML as a string or maybe as XML or something like that, and I can start to pick it apart in different ways and I can find pieces of information that I want. So how would you start to do that even before we start writing some code? Well, using the developer tools for a lot of the major web browsers out there today, it's quite simple actually. So let's start with this title, Candy Crush Saga. If I were to right click on this and select in Chrome, inspect element, it's going to open up a new view and you're going to see not only the rendered page here in your browser, but you're also going to see a nice little hierarchical structure that you can navigate through that HTML, which is pretty sweet. And once you kind of go over things here, it's going to highlight it on the page. So as you can see here, this H1 tag that has an item prop attribute of name is where that text comes from, Candy Crush Saga. Well, that's pretty nice. Now I know where that data is, and now I just need to be able to pull that out. Well, it's the same thing with the author right below it. It's in this H2 in that same div, so I can get to that data as well. So that's kind of nice. And I could even come over here to the price, inspect element. Here that's in a div called with an item prop attribute again called price. And then here this says free. Now, obviously, if this was a paid app, it would have the price in here, but at least I can see where that data is now. And then down at the very bottom here, I can see customers also bought. I'll inspect that element, and you're going to see, okay, that's an H2. And then I have a div here, but I bet if I were to dig down a little bit deeper, I'm going to see a number of these divs that are going to have information in it about these particular apps. And eventually I would get down into the presentation here and you're going to see a number of list items, and I'm going to see a link to where I can get more information about that particular app as well as its name, Cookie Jam in this case. So once we start to scrape that data out, so we saw the different pieces of information of where within the HTML we can get the title and the author of the app as well as the price. But now once we start looking down here at the bottom, we found where we can get the title of these customers also bought apps, but we also have a link here to where we can go get more information about that particular app as well. So that's where the whole concept of crawling is going to come into place. So now I have these other URLs that I could go navigate to. I could crawl to those URLs and pull out the same pieces of data that I'm pulling from this particular page as well. So the only question at that point comes, how deep do you want to go? Because if you were to just keep following link after link after link, you'd probably reach the end of the internet before long, but that's not really what we want to do. We want to kind of limit this a little bit. So we want to start on this page. We want to pull out a few pieces of data, and then we want to maybe go another level deeper. And I want to go and grab the same information about customers also bought from these. And then you could nest several layers deep and continue to go from page to page to page, but I think that should be enough to get you started. So now that we kind of see how we're going to pull that data out and where that data comes from, let's introduce Python and see how we can start to issue these same requests that we're doing through the browser here, namely by issuing some HTTP GET requests.